Why is it that some people are able to continuously tap into more and more growth while other people stagnate and repeat the same cycle for years or decades on end? I'm sure that you know someone who has been broke for 50 years, who's been overweight for 40 years, who's been miserable for 30 years, and have constantly found themselves stuck running through the same old cycles, unable to get out. And then on the other hand, there are some people, like I said, who are able to continuously grow and evolve. They're able to continuously grow in their self-improvement, with their physique, in their careers, in their levels of happiness and fulfillment. And it's like, why is there such a big dissonance between these two people? It's because the second group understand this concept and how to continuously elevate it. Now, what I want to run you through here is what I call the thermometer of your identity. Essentially, what you have is an upper limit and a lower limit. And essentially think about these like you would think about a thermostat that is maintaining the temperature of your house or apartment. Whenever the temperature gets too high, the cooling system will either kick in or the heating system will turn off to bring you back down to a more steady temperature that's in between the two extremes. When the temperature gets too low, either the cooling turns off, or of course the heating kicks in, depending on where you're trying to maintain the internal environment in comparison in relation to the external. Essentially, there is always going to be this recalibration process. Whenever you hit the upper limit, it's brought back down. When you hit the lower limit, it's brought back up. A way to visualize this as it applies to your life is with finances. So many people will get stuck between a certain range of money. They can never seem to break out of it, but they also don't drop below the lower limit. So think about, just for simplicity's sake, let's say that the upper limit is $1,000 and the lower limit is $500. Whenever the person who has an upper limit of $1,000 either reaches $1,000 or exceeds $1,000, they're going to feel like they've got all the money in the world and they'll go blow it on a new pair of shoes or something. But when they reach the lower limit towards 500 or less, they will start panicking, saving every cent, penny pinching, and bring themselves back up. And they'll always remain within this range. This applies to everything. This might be 100 kilos and this might be 90 kilos. You might still be overweight at 90 kilos, but as long as you're in between this range of 100 to 90, you're comfortable. If you get over 100, you want to lose weight. You probably won't get below 90 because anytime you're closer to 90, you think, I've got so much more flexibility to eat now. I'll eat a bit more freely. I don't have to track my calories or go to the gym. I'm looking good. And you'll stay within this range, never able to break out of it. The real goal here is to actually raise this upper limit. It's to try and really continue to elevate your potential. But the question is, how do we actually do that? Well, there are two elements to raising your potential. Think about it like there's on one end, the things that are pulling you down, and on the other end, there are the things that will raise you up. So what is it that's going to raise you up? Well, it's raising your standards. How do you raise your standards? There are so many people who talk about monk mode and going all in on disciplining yourself. And while I do still believe that those are important, if you want to raise your standards, you have to change your environment. So there is a story about essentially goldfish will only grow to the size of the fishbowl that they're in. And all that's changing from the massive goldfish to the small goldfish who are contained within smaller fish tanks is the size of their environment that they're in. It's the potential of the environment that they're in. And so the fastest way to raise your potential is to actually either, for example, if you're living in a city or an area where people around you are really limiting your potential, the best thing you can do to raise your standards is to move around and get around people who are more driven and into an area that's more driven. It might be even on a smaller level than that, just the immediate friend group that you have. I know you've heard the saying, you become the 5 people you hang around. I know it's cliche, but it is, of course, fundamentally true. And so if you want to raise your standards, one of the best ways you can do that is just to get around the immediate circle of people who have higher standards. And at first, you're going to experience the growing pains of breaking out of this upper limit, right? Because once you're around people who are doing far in excess of even your highest upper limit, it's going to pull you magnetically upwards through the roof of your upper limit. And that's going to be really uncomfortable. But over time, it'll reset you to have at least a similar upper limit to the people that you're hanging around. Now, raising your standards, like I said, changing your environment is the most important thing to raise your standards. But again, there are also going to be things that pull your standards and your overall potential down. And these are essentially all of the limitations that you have, all the parts of yourself that are insecure, that don't like certain elements of yourself. And I made a video about this, how to handle trauma, but essentially you have this core self, right? This is who you are at your core without all of these lenses of fears and doubts and insecurities and comparison and not feeling good enough and all the inadequacies that you experience. You have this core you at the base of your entire being. So you have negative thoughts, you have these negative emotions, you have these things that happened to you in the past, but underneath all of that is this confident, powerful version of you that exists at the core of it all. And so essentially you have all these elements of yourself. Think about these as like parts of yourself who have been hurt in the past that are essentially, they're hiding you from the true essence of yourself. They're identifying with the true essence of yourself. Texas is down here. And essentially they're making you believe that you are them. They're making you believe that all of their insecurities are your insecurities, and all the ways that they feel the ways that you feel, and all the things that they've been through and the things that they've been told are the things that you should believe. And so you can really think about them more like this, more like external layers that are layering on your sense of self and making you believe that you are inadequate, unworthy, or that are dragging you into bad coping habits and mechanisms like overeating, playing video games, watching porn, or whatever it may be. So if you want to elevate yourself, you have to actually overcome these elements of yourself that are pulling you down and holding you back. How do you do that? Well, obviously it's quite a nuanced topic, but fundamentally you have to help these parts of you see that, for one, the things that happened in the past actually weren't inherently bad and there were upsides to come from them. You have to neutralize the perspective of the past events that created these perceptions. But secondly, you actually have to look at the elements of yourself that existed at that time. For example, say that at the age of 10, your parents told you that they didn't love you, or they were drunk and they had to go at you and they said, "We don't love you, we regret having you." And that part of you, that 10-year-old version of yourself, is stuck in this element of your timeline of your past. So like, say that we've got this timeline, here's the present, here's the moment you were born, and there's a part of you, let's say it's this red part here, that's stuck in this part of your timeline at 10 years old, and it is still shielding you, the core you, because it's afraid that it will be hurt in the same way. So you actually have to, for one, again, identify the upsides that came from that experience. Maybe as a 10-year-old, when your parents did tell you they didn't love you, it actually forced you to try and find more self-love within yourself, to work harder on yourself, to try and become a better version of yourself in the hopes that it might have helped you get more love externally. And that might have driven you to work harder in your career, which allowed you to meet your partner in your, at your work. And then you allowed, all of this facilitated your ability to create financial success and have a loving family. Like, if you really drag out the timeline, you'll start to see that although that original event was really painful and it taught you some maladaptive things, the long-term consequences of that was actually pretty beneficial. There are also lessons and things you can take from it, but ultimately you're trying to see that that event wasn't actually inherently bad, it was neutral. Now, secondly, you actually have to look at this version of yourself and have compassion for them and help them see that they aren't the things that they believe that they are. That they aren't worthless. They aren't not lovable. You have to show them and give them the space in your mind. And I know this sounds weird, but bear with me. You have to try and help them see that they are seen and really ask them, like, what are you trying to tell me? How is it that you feel? And how can I actually benefit you? Because this part of you will not allow the shield that it's using to protect you to be released until it feels that you, the self, can protect that element of you from reoccurring, or from that same pain reoccurring to you and to, as a byproduct, it. I know this is all very complicated and high level. I'll probably make another video going deeper onto this. I'll leave a link to that other video that I made about handling trauma and stuff like that after this video. But essentially, that is how you, one, overcome the weights that are pulling your potential down. And of course, when you pair that with raising your standards by changing your environment and elevating your environment, you'll be able to take this upper limit all the way to the fucking moon, because there really is no limit on how much you can elevate your potential. You just have to understand that potential is it's an ever-changing thing, but it is also a solid, it's solidified at each point in time with an upper limit and a lower limit. So your potential isn't always just inherently limitless. You actually have to increase that potential, and the potential that you have to increase your potential is limitless, but your potential itself is a range. So you have to keep beating on the upper limit and keep trying to elevate it to ultimately raise your potential as an individual. Okay? Hopefully that was valuable. If it was, don't forget to subscribe. I'll leave another video here and I'll see you in the next one.